Uganda makes it illegal with the death penalty for homosexual activity. Is there a combination, is there a connection between the lack of breastfeeding and the rise in the transgender gender reassignment movement? And also, we want to pay our special remembrance and tributes to professional wrestler Sid Eudy. All that and so much more in today's show. So don't go away. Roll the credits.
When you're feeling all alone, only you to hold your own. No one there to help you, only there to hold you down. So stop, don't beat up yourself, 'cause it's everyone else. So don't look down, look up around, 'cause you are better. I can see that when the fire gets started, it takes a lot of tears to wash away. When they come and make you feel downhearted, don't hide away. And now it's feeling like the longest day. It's getting harder to find the will to stay. You gotta find the strength inside of you, so don't hide away. I can see that when the fire gets started, it takes a lot of tears to wash away.
Okay, well, folks, welcome. This is actually the Mind, Body and Soul show. We were hoping our new credits would be ready for today, but unfortunately they haven't been. We had a number of different things happening, but I'm here, and that's the main thing. We've got a great show lined up for you today, and we want to begin the show by sharing our condolences and our passing thoughts to the passing of former WWE, WCW, and phenomenal on-air wrestling talent in Sid Eudy, otherwise known as Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, and Psycho Sid. Sid was one of these guys that I grew up watching on TV and paved a really important legacy and left a really important legacy for so many people who, follow today. And I think all wrestling fans, as obviously we've got a lot of them here on this platform, would feel it remiss of me if I didn't say something about Sid. That's the joy of having your own show, is that you can cover the topics that you want to cover. And, again, I got to meet and greet with Sid several years ago when we were in Liverpool at the For Love of Wrestling inaugural convention. It was a phenomenal thing. Always happy, always smiling guy, big guy for sure. Not as tall as I thought he'd be, but it was wonderful and just lovely and such a shock when I learned it was passing the other day. So all our family go out to, or all our family's thoughts and prayers, of course, go out to Gunnar, his son, his grandkids, his wife, everybody there, and people far more qualified than I am. I'm sure we'll do far more fitting tributes. If we'd been able to get some of our packages sorted out today, would have liked to pay special tribute. We'll aim to do that, in the near future. But a dearly missed guy for sure. And as I say, all our thoughts, love, and prayers go out to the Eudy family. But on with the show now. Some more important and pressing news that's come out this past, well, really in the last 24 hours. Ugandan president signs anti-gay laws, and it also comes with the death penalty. Now, Uganda is one of many countries around the world that does not abide by the woke culture, does not abide by LGBTQ, and does not align with it in any way, shape, or form. But this is what news reporters had to say, and I found it very interesting. So take a look at this.
Life in prison, even the death penalty for being gay? In Uganda tonight, that's reality after President Yoweri Museveni signed one of the world's most draconian anti-gay laws, triggering an international backlash, threats of punishment from the US, and fears of other African nations following Uganda into an LGBT crackdown.
This is not where I would like to be.
This Ugandan LGBT activist had to flee their country, now living in exile.
You are arresting us for literally doing nothing, for simply existing, But where are we supposed to go? How did we become refugees in our own countries?
The new law punishes gay sex with a life sentence. For the crime of promoting homosexuality, 20 years. It was watered down from an earlier version that criminalized merely identifying as LGBTQ. But this version imposes even harsher penalties for what it calls aggravated homosexuality, same-sex relations involving children, people with HIV, or other vulnerable people.
When you commit aggravated homosexuality, the law says you shall be liable to suffer death.
Across the globe, outrage. President Biden calling it shameful. The U.S. saying it will directly impede American aid to Uganda, including in fighting HIV/AIDS.
The enactment of Uganda's Anti-Homosexuality Act is a tragic violation of human rights, of universal human rights.
Even Republican Senator Ted Cruz, not known as a champion of LGBT rights, calling it grotesque, an abomination, while Secretary of State Antony Blinken threatens visa bans on Ugandan officials. But in Uganda, the law's chief backer brushing off U.S. threats.
Let all of us be subjected. In fact, let all Ugandans be denied visas to America, Canada, and the European Union.
As Ugandan lawyers challenge the law in constitutional court, other African nations may follow Uganda's example. Already, 32 of Africa's 54 nations criminalize homosexuality. Those countries make up nearly half of the 67 countries globally where being gay is a crime. In Kenya, Tanzania, and Ghana, there are campaigns underway to replicate the new Ugandan law.
We are delighted to know that Uganda has been able to set the pace. It's a good thing that other countries are also taking up this issue.
Josh Letterman is joining us now, and it's such important reporting, Josh. I'm struck by the person who said, I'm a refugee now in my own country here. You talk about how more than half of African nations criminalize same-sex relationships here. Obviously, death penalty, extreme end of this. But talk about the comparison to punishments that people face in other African nations who are LGBTQ+.
Yeah, it really varies across the continent, Hallie. There are a handful of other countries in addition to this one that do have Sharia law as part of their criminal systems and therefore do have the death penalty on the books as a potential punishment for homosexuality. Then there are other countries like Tanzania and Sudan where they have a life sentence as the maximum punishment available under the law for gay sex acts. But then there are countries that have more limited measures, such as Tanzania, where it is illegal to provide condoms and lube to centers that deal, for example, with HIV/AIDS infection. But it's not just about the formal laws on the books, Hallie, because even in countries in Africa where there are not laws that explicitly outlaw homosexuality, there are very high rates of homophobic crime and even violence targeting LGBTQ people. And on the flip side of this, only one country in the entire continent has legalized same-sex marriage. That country is South Africa. Hallie?
Josh Letterman, thank you very much.
So, some really interesting facts obviously coming out from all of this now. For those of you that don't know, I've also been studying the history of medicine, certainly in the West over this summer. I needed something to do and decided that was something that I wanted to put my efforts into. I have a number of different thoughts with regards to this now. Of course, you know, folks who know and watch the show for a long time and have done for a long time know really where I stand on the woke culture and on the LGBTQI stuff. I always try to remain as balanced as I possibly can. And while I may not agree with certain people's lifestyles and their choices and things, it is theirs and it is their lifestyle and it's their choice. What I find interesting from this topic, and the news reporters talked about it, was about the rise in AIDS. Now, that was one of the topics that we studied with the history of medicine and the University of Yale. And I think what's really going on, I think a big part of it is the fact the rise in AIDS right now it isn't getting any better. And I'll give you a prime example. I've got, again, I would love to stick this up, but I've got the numbers right in front of me. As of 2010, so you're talking 14 years ago, sub-Saharan Africa had 24.7 million known cases of AIDS that existed. South and Southeast Asia, 7.8 million. Middle East and Northern Africa, 460,000. Oceania, 81,000. Over in the United States, across the pond, we've got 1.4 million. The Caribbean was 250,000. Latin America was 1.7 million. You know, AIDS is a major, major problem. And it comes, this is, you know, again, from a professor far smarter than I am that's saying this, but it comes from men having sex with men through anal penetration, and it comes from the sharing of needles if you're a drug user, but also from sex workers as well. Those are the three primary ways that you can catch AIDS. But going further than that, in a topic that we're going to talk about later on the show, it also comes what we call vertical transference, which is from mother to child or mother to baby through breastfeeding. It comes obviously from rape and from obviously sexual violence and misconduct. And those are really, you've got 5 or 6 main ways that you can catch AIDS. And I think it's important to not rule every single thing out. Now, as I say, well, I'm not for certain things. I'm very much aware that universally there is an agenda being pushed right now. In the West, we have extreme leftists. You've obviously got that with Starmer in power, with Biden in power. The fact, again, that in the United States, they're talking about abortion being a... I should put up a warning about this, folks. We're going to be dealing with some heavy topics here, just so as you know. But you know, essentially they're talking about full-term abortion, that you have the child and then you lay it to the side and decide what you're going to do about it. That is a sick and heinous thing. And anybody that's voting for this and coming out and saying, well, you're a man, you don't get the right to comment. Actually, yes, I do, because I'm a human being. And unlike many of you that are watching, you fail to understand that life actually begins 6 weeks after conception. That's when the first heartbeat comes. That's when life officially begins. And you can go to any medical text about that. The fact that you're having this conversation, again, should show you how far, you know, we've fallen as a humanity. And a friend of mine who's away dealing with some medical emergencies right now, we send love and prayers, of course, to her and her family, was making this point that, you know, in certainly biblical times, you almost have this tier system of, you know, when it's sort of its best, and we are looking pretty much at one of the worst times in history right now, morally and ethically and spiritually, as you can see. Not the worst time, of course, not yet. That's still going to come, but certainly that this is going on. And I think when I'm looking at Dubai, when I'm looking at Russia, when I'm looking at Southern Europe, when I'm looking at, you know, what the world will class as third world nations that are still very much in the moral and ethical, you know, the Bible sort of teaching things, but also the control and dominance, it's not surprising why they don't want to have same-sex relationships. And that goes for lesbians, that goes for homosexuals, transsexuals, gender reassigned people, whatever you want to call it. They don't want that woke culture. And that's why I've had a number of my friends, someone that I was trying to get on the show earlier on today that unfortunately couldn't make it, had said that they could not essentially move anywhere else other than the UK because they would be killed. There is no, you know, question about it. You know, and it's very difficult. For those of you asking if this is a live show, yes, this is a live show. So if you want to comment and share your views and share your thoughts, of course, on what we're talking about with the topics, obviously with Ugandans' deadly anti-gay law, and then what we're going to talk about later on with gender identity. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. And this is an open show, so again, try and be respectful, but I do appreciate that people are going to share their views for sure. So going back to what we were saying, when you look at the rise in AIDS, naturally it is going to cause major panic within communities, and I think it should. And knowing, as a Ugandan president does, and a lot of the government officials over there, that it comes primarily from men having sex with men, anal penetration. Sorry to be so blunt, folks, but that's what it is. But also from needles, from drugs, and from sex workers. Again, you've also got to look at the flip side, that this same Ugandan president, I was going to say prime minister there because that's on my mind right now, but literally had said, rather than using, and buying condoms because they're so expensive, what you need to do is to use it, boil it, and then use it again. Well, anyone, of course, knows that plastic melts, rubber melts. If you boil it, I've never had the experience of boiling condoms. Anybody that has, please feel free to share your input and your advice. I won't, point your name if you don't want, but he makes a really interesting point. But also, this is the same president that said drinking, garlic and olive oil will stop you from contracting AIDS. It will not. Here's the thing about AIDS: it can lay dormant in your system. Some records actually show for as long as a decade. And this is all backed up by the history of medicine and American health boards and health boards around the world. You can go and find out if, again, you can verify everything I'm saying. But it can lie in your system, for up to a decade. Some cases have even been longer. But once it starts getting into your system, there is nothing that you can do. And one of the final ways that it gets into your system is by vaginal sores. If there are openings around, or lesions around the opening of the anus or the vagina, that will cause and lead to, if somebody's carrying AIDS, the contraction of AIDS. So I can understand why they're worried and why they're concerned. What I find deeply concerning is then the fact that you're going to have the death penalty. I mean, that's as severe as it gets. But again, looking at it from, the Bible or religiosity, again, I can completely understand why they're doing that, because they're looking at the world, they're looking at what's going on, they're looking at what's happening and saying, to be gay is a violation against nature. To be lesbian is a violation against nature. To be transgender is a violation against nature. And again, we've covered this in other shows, so please don't take my words out of context. If you are going through gender reassignment surgery and you have not had, some form of mental health coaching and guidance and things, I'm not saying I'm the person to do it, although let's run the banner that, we do have spaces available. But what I am saying is, if you haven't gone through some form of guidance and help and therapy, and that hasn't been explored with you, rather than just saying, hey, I'm a man, all of a sudden I want to be a woman, I would start looking at why is that? What's going on? What's happening? In you, what's made you, what's led you to this specific, period in your life? And obviously, everybody's journey is different and is unique. But there are a number of collaborations, or a number of correlations and contributing factors that are leading to this. And one of the ones that I actually found the most interesting this morning is, we're going to talk about, stay on the line, folks that are commenting. We're going to get back to you momentarily. But one of the things that I found really interesting was shared with me this morning, and we're always looking for correlations as medical professionals and things. And this is one of them, because cholesterol has been heavily discussed and talked about sort of in the last couple of months. And I want to see what you make of this. Again, I'm not saying one way or the other, and not, voting one way or the other. I'm presenting the facts to you as they're coming available, and as I've been able to find out information about them. So take a look at this and see what you think.
Does a baby get from breast milk?
First of all, it gets cholesterol, which is not in the formula. And babies absolutely need cholesterol.
But people think that cholesterol is bad.
Cholesterol is essential for the baby. Little boys make testosterone at levels of an adult male until they're 6 months old. And that programs them to express male characteristics in puberty. What is testosterone made out of? Made out of cholesterol. All the hormones are made out of cholesterol. And if that baby doesn't get cholesterol and can't make those hormones, or if the bloodstream is being flooded with estrogens from soy formula, what's going to happen at puberty? Might not go as it's supposed to go. And I don't think any parent wants that for their child.
People use this on the internet as like a slang term or an insult. They say that we have a generation of men who are soy boys. Have you seen that? Soy-fed babies tend to have, when they get to be adults, they have a hard time completing projects, completing tasks. They're not as focused as a man or woman should be. And that's a terrible.
So there's a number of different thoughts that I have with regards to this, but this caught my attention. This really I found really, really interesting, because cholesterol is one of the things that actually our brains are made up of. Our brain is cholesterol. Our brain is, essentially that. And we've been told for so long that, you're not to take cholesterol, you're not to have cholesterol, cholesterol's bad, cholesterol's bad. So you're looking at why so many people, like the lady said, have such a deprivation in their health and their overall well-being. Now, how we get it, I think, is a really important thing, because again, for years we were told, don't use butter, don't drink milk, don't do this, don't do that. And now all of a sudden, again, use sprays, use olive oil, and use this and use that. And then all of a sudden you're told that, no, this isn't actually good for you. What I also learned recently is that the brain actually doesn't have blood cells within it. It has blood cells flowing around it, and it's all the different, neuro activity and neurostrands that are going on around your brain. Now, I don't know about this. I mean, I'm looking at obviously the anti-gay laws, also with the cholesterol laws, and I'm looking, and I haven't had enough time to do a great deal of research about this, but this is something I do want to find out more about, because I noticed a rise in the transgender movement and the gender reassignment surgery and gender euphoria, or gender euphoria, whatever the phrase is, back in 2016. And I'm looking for what major changes were going on there. Now, I know it's been heavily funded. I know that, this has been something that is going on, but I'm also equally aware of, the noise essentially that's being made that's saying that the powers that be are trying to, cull the population, and they're trying to do this and trying to do that. Again, you can look at the conspiracy theories until you're blue in the face. But all I know is, if the entire world is gay, if the entire world is, gender reassigned, if the entire world is, lesbian, that you're not going to have a population. But then, of course, you could say, well, actually, yeah, you can, because, you don't actually need a man. All you need is semen. All you need is semen and a viable host nowadays. So what I mean by this is, you won't have traditionally the way that we have known the world, in all its beauty and all its flaws and all its wonders. You won't have the world in which we have experienced, obviously, for millennia. Here's one of the things I suppose I concluded with when I heard this was, for human beings who strive so much to protect their property, protect their possessions, protect their world, protect all that they've built, the dinosaurs were far bigger and far more vast in numbers than what we are, and something wiped them out like that. COVID, if it's true, could have wiped out the human race like that. We are not as, infallible and as unbeatable as what we think we are, and all this stuff that we're fighting for. I think what it's coming down now really to is a question. And the question is, for every single one of us, for every 9.8 billion, 9.6 billion people, whatever they are on the planet now, I don't have the exact numbers anymore, but I think it's every single one of us asking the question, is and does what we do contribute to humanity? And do I mean, by that, I mean at its fundamental nature, am I contributing to humanity by being, a straight person? Am I contributing and furthering humanity by being a gay person, by being a lesbian, by, what benefit does it have to the world for me to have my gender reassigned? Well, aside from science, again, the question I always come back to, and I mean this with the greatest empathy and respect in the world to people that are going through this, is what happens if you go through all the surgeries, you pay all the money, you do all that you're going to do, and it doesn't work. If you haven't had some form of mental health, person, some specialist that's there, that's actually taking care of you, that has your best interest at heart, and not just a way to make a quick buck, dollar, yen, pound, whatever, which a lot of them have, then this is the reason why people that have had gender reassignment surgeries have either had them undone, been left in a state of how do I go on, or have taken their own lives. And if you don't have the support that's there, and like I say, I don't know necessarily that I'm the right person in every circumstance to be able to support you through that and in that, but it is so important that as a world we wake up and realize that people like Nicola Sturgeon were using the woke culture to further her votes. That's why she was causing riots and rows in Glasgow and in Edinburgh and the other places that she went so she could get the seats. Realize, friends, whether you are gender, whether you are, leftist persuasion, like rightist persuasion, like me, in the balance or trying to be in the balance, realize that you are being played. If you are a liberal or you are a Democrat, you're a Republican or a conservative, if you are Lib Dem over here or Conservative Party, whatever you are, realize that you are being played. You are being split. You're being split by the very people that are promising to look after you. You really think that the government has your best interests at heart? We know they don't. So you have to be able to go within inside yourself to find your own answers and not being told. That's why I think in many ways that the church is dying out universally, is because more and more people got sick and tired of being spoon-fed and told what they needed to think, right? Rather than actually have the genuine encounters with God, the divine spirit, Kankashua, whatever you want and wherever it leads you. That's the best way of putting it. We've got some comments coming in, which I'm loving right now. But it's really interesting. So we're going to go to Kind Inquirer. I don't know if he or she is still on, or they. I'm not going to go through the 170 pronouns, so forgive me. 60 years will not be talking about A's or gays. I don't know that that's going to be true, in all honesty. As a medical professional, certainly in training, we've been talking about it since the 1980s when AIDS very first came about. If we're not talking about it in 60 years, either we found a cure, which, please God, absolutely, hallelujah, or we're all dead, because the numbers that I read out to you earlier on of people that have active AIDS known around the world in the United States alone was 1.4 million as of 2010. I don't know what it is now in 2024. But again, I think we need to be very much aware of that. Will we be talking about gays? Will we be talking about same sex? I think if we're not talking about this, I think this is why this topic gets so much attention and so much news time, media time, airtime, thought time. I think a big part of it is because it is so damn important that we have this conversation, because if you're going through this period in your life, I firmly believe, if you're going through this period in life, and it's one thing to say, I wonder what it'd like to be to be a woman, or maybe you want to dress like a woman. I've never wanted to dress like a woman personally because I've never found women's clothes to fit me personally. Too big around the chest, too big around the back, and yeah, some of the underwear never done it for me. To me, if you want to go out dressed as, a woman and you're a guy with a beard, it's like, but you could say, well, but that's, you've been conditioned that way. And that's probably true. But again, you look at it, that's almost the cop-out for everything. You've been conditioned that way. You've been conditioned to hate marijuana. I may have done, but here's the thing. Marijuana in its, purest form actually has a lot of great health benefits. So I can't have been conditioned that much. You can be conditioned into one thing or another, but it doesn't remove, the power of thought, the power of heart, the power of will, the power of spirit, and again, the power of listening to what's quite clearly right and wrong. And when you do the research as I have done, when you spend years doing the research as I have done, you look and you say, right, who's really benefiting from all these transgender reassignment surgeries? Is it the people who are having the surgeries done? More often than not, no, it's not. Who's the people benefiting from all the IVF stuff and the false lies that are being told that, oh yeah, this is the best way for you to conceive a child, when in actual fact, the results and the word is not coming to me. Again, we're unscripted, but the amount of the success rate, that's what I'm looking for. The success rate for IVF is not nearly as high and not nearly as fail-safe as what people believe. So you've got to look at these things for yourself. When you're being told to take this medication, you need to do your own research. In everything that you do, you are responsible for you, and it's so important. Again, I can't agree with that comment. In 60 years, we'll not be talking about AIDS or gays. With regards to AIDS, I would love it to be the case. With regards to homosexuality, we've been talking about it, for so long. I think, again, And again, I can say this with, no shame, no remorse or anything like that. I get we are horny beings. We have a lustful nature. We're sexually curious. We want to do things that's bizarre, but from a scientific, from a biblical, from a spiritual, from an evolutionary, from every point that matters on the scale, you have to look at things and say, is it lust? Is it love? Okay, that's the first thing that a lot of people get really confused about. The second thing is, at what point, again, you can go back to the Bible and find this out with Sodom and Gomorrah, but at what point did people look at things and said, oh, yes, I want to do this, and oh, yes, I want to do that? It's the acting of something that, and again, this is a whole nother topic, of course, but I'm loving having this conversation. I think it's a really important conversation to have. Again, I'm not looking to make anybody right or wrong. I get it. I understand, as a normal function, healthy guy, you have your sexual urges, you have your sexual drives. And I think for far too long, people have tried to suppress that and not be who they are, not do what they naturally do. Because, guys, quite frankly, your role is to go forth and multiply. And that's in the Bible. That's in the Quran. That's in every major scripture, every major text that's out there. Women, historically, was to be the bearer and the fruit of the child. Now, have human beings changed? Have the world evolved? Has this happened? Has that happened? Yes, to a degree. But at its fundamental level, if you want the world to continue, that's still what we are here for. Every other animal on the planet seems to know this, except human beings who are literally hell-bent on managing to cock everything up for themselves and everyone else. And I'm glad we can have some fun with this as well. Let's move on. Let's move on to another topic or another question. It's really amazing how devastating reassignment surgery can be. Lots of folks coming out as regretting the surgery. Yes. If you watch Jordan Peterson, he did an interview recently, and I forget the young lady's name. I'm very old school, by the way, so I still go by, gentleman, sir, lady. If you don't like it, I really don't care. But I will show you the same grace as what you show me. So, I haven't got enough life left in me to be learning all these pronouns and genders and everything else. I will treat you with respect. That's the best that I can offer. Hopefully we'll have a laugh. Hopefully, again, you're a human being at the end of the day, whatever form that takes. Just try and covering all bases, which I know I can't, because I know someone's going to complain at some point. And that's your prerogative. Anyway, but it's true. Jordan Peterson is one of the ones most recently that was talking about this, that and his guest went into a lot of depth on how the puberty blockers came out and it wasn't properly spoken about on how she would respond to them, what they actually did, the fact that they make you infertile, the fact that they, do all of this, that, and the other. That there's a lot of horrific things that are going on. And even, when that even going for fertility treatment is immensely stressful, immensely painful, immensely invasive, depending how far you go with it. I can't even imagine what it's like to willingly butcher your body in the way that human beings are, and it's often children. I don't think anybody under the age of about 25 should be even approached for these things. And yet we've got kids, as I say, as young as 18 months, and it's the parents that are deciding, no, I don't want a boy, I want a girl. That there's how we got to this place, I'm yet to conclude. But when you look at this and when you look at what's going on, as a scientific person, as a person of faith, you recognize actually how screwed up all of this is. And the fact that people are supporting this, the fact, as I said earlier on at the beginning of the show, that people are supporting abortion, people are supporting the murder, essentially, of babies and children. And again, people have tried to BS me before on how the procedure's done. I know exactly how the procedure's done. Okay, I know how it's literally the dissecting of a child, of a baby, piece by piece. It's disgusting. But now the fact that as well, it's what's known as full-term abortion. Biden and Harris should be absolutely appalled and shamed and should never, ever had a sound night's sleep again. There you go. It's against the laws of humanity. It's against the laws of nature, what they're doing. This isn't the fact of, somebody, again, let's just speak frankly. This isn't the fact of someone, ending up with a child against their will, whether it be rape, whether it be, whatever it might be. The fact of the matter is, you've waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. And again, I can't lay full blame at the mother. Okay, it may be a family situation, it may be a husband situation, but I think then to turn around and say, no, I want a fully born child to be terminated. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my lips? We are literally taking, well, we're not, they are. It's the rare time that I will say us and them, because I want no part in their inhumane acts. The fact that they're taking a fully grown baby who's alive, who's breathing, who's awake, who's kicking and screaming, and then deciding to have their skull crushed, their legs pulled apart, their arms pulled apart. If it makes you ill and sick, it should. Because maybe that's the only way that you're going to respond and that you're going to, it is. I mean, thank you very much, Kind Inquirer. I didn't know if you were still on. Their acts are inhumane. Again, like I said, it goes against the Bible. It goes against scripture. It goes against nature, science, morality, every single thing possible is what it goes against. And yet you've people advocating for this. And who's holding them to account? Who holds to account the people that are performing this crazy stuff? Again, who holds account the people that were responsible for 9/11? And guess what? It was not just Saddam Hussein. It's probably a little bit closer to home, i.e. in the United States and in the UK. There's something for you to think about. Yes, it goes against the Bhagavad Gita. That's really interesting that you brought that up. Thank you for doing that. I love that we've got people that have read different things, that are up on different things. And again, I was doing a show on TikTok, just telling this briefly. I was doing a show on TikTok recently about the riots that were going on in the UK, the fact that we are one major riot away from a full civil war. And people couldn't believe that this was going on. But what struck me even more was you had people from, Hindu communities, Muslim communities, Christian communities, Catholic communities, Islamic communities, all of which that were saying, you know what? We might not necessarily agree all on the same thing. Although I've said for years, I think, you should have a Christian, Hindu, Catholic. You should have one representative from every faith sit down with your scripture, put them all together and see what we'll come out with. I think that'd be tremendous fun. And obviously, if you've studied the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, if you've studied the Buddhist text, if you've studied, obviously, Christianity and theology and stuff, you can do that, but it's very difficult to do by yourself. Dermot McCulloch is probably one of the ones that I would have on this. Another gentleman says, "Lady and gentlemen," I always laugh at that. Yes, it's the refinisms in me. It's one of the last things that's there. Let's see. Seeing more people getting sick of certain narratives being pushed, especially the ones that are diverse and no. Yes, so I'm glad you brought this up, and I know exactly who this person is. We were sending out well wishes to you and your sister earlier on. You know who you are, and I'm delighted for the really good news as well. We'll leave it at that. But it is very, very true. I'm seeing more and more people now that are getting sick and tired with ads on social media, that are being pushed, and ads on social media that are, essentially designed to get you to buy something, to do something. They're trying to fuel you and whatever else. And a lot of it is just absolute garbage. And people are waking up to it. And more people, believe it or not, are actually leaving social media to spend more and more time with their families. The fad, it's like, oh, well, okay, it's fine. It's done and dusted. But the fad is almost, it's not over. It's just changing, I think, more than anything else. It's interesting. And one of the final comments that we've got, keep your comments going, folks. It'll keep me on the air for a while. We want to reach as many people as we can, obviously, with this. And I know for the folks that are watching this in the replay, of course, don't forget to do all the great stuff like, share, and subscribe. Share this with your friend, because it could be the very thing they need to hear to keep them informed of the insanity of the world. There are some people who survived their mothers trying to abort them. They are grateful for being alive. There are some great speakers who were survivors. So here's the thing. We're going to cover this in another show. And I want to be very blunt here and be personal for a moment. It's very much apparent that my wife and I can't have children naturally. and we've gone down the fertility route. We are going to cover this in another video because I think it's important for people to know what they're getting into. But equally, one of the things that I do want to say, and I know there was people on here earlier on, there will be people on here that view this in the replay, that have shared personal stories with me on how they couldn't get pregnant, how fertility, for them really had a lot of issues and a lot of stuff that's going on. There's a lot of great advancements, scientifically that's going on. And I do not mean to, bash science at all and to be horrible and to be harsh or anything like that in this instance. But equally, there's a lot of stuff that science just shouldn't have a place in. Equally, again, that's my thoughts and my view. I'm very much aware that there are a lot of people that wouldn't have children now had it not been for scientific intervention. Equally, I'm very much aware that a lot of kids nowadays wouldn't have the issues that they do if it wasn't for scientific intervention. So again, I think it has to be seen on a case-by-case thing. But what I was going to say was, it's apparent to my wife and I that we're not going to be able to have children naturally. So we have been talking about adoption things. And the point that Epic Wolf 3 brought up there was, I'm going to further it a little bit, is the amount of people that had survived either their mothers trying to abort them and that had gone into the adoption or orphanage program. And like she said, the great speakers, but also the fact that if you adopt, and let's face it, orphanages and adoption houses are overcrowded, massively overcrowded right now, with, so many cases, so many candidates, so many things going on. If you adopt a child, it's not like if you adopt a puppy, but if you adopt a child, you are saying to that child or children in that moment, you are more special and you are more cared for and more loved than you could ever imagine. Why? Because we chose you. Okay? You may not be ours by blood, but we chose you to be a part of our lives. And I think, honestly, that's one of the best things that you can do. I really do. And I'm not saying anybody who's had, children and everything else. I'm saying to the people that can't have children or people that are looking at adoption or people that are feeling down on themselves right now because they haven't been able to have children. If you go down the adoption route, you can have a relationship with the child. And I found this as a youth worker. You can have a relationship with the child that changes not only their life, but your life forever. And I've got still friends of mine that were kids when I was youth workers that are now in their 20s, and coming up to their 30s, that have gone on to be phenomenal human beings and who I love and I treasure dearly. And I think just are absolutely incredible. So I'm not so certain about this black and white narrative anymore. And that's why, like I said, I try to sit in the middle. I'm very much aware that people in Uganda want to be gay, want to be lesbian, want to, be with the same sex, want to be with who they believe they love, want to be who they believe they are, even if they're not who they believe they are. That's a whole other topic, and we're getting into existentialism and the metaphysical. But I'm very much aware as well of the fact of a government wanting to keep order, very much aware of AIDS, that there are some genuine people out there that are trying to do good by the people that they serve. But unfortunately, there's just so many people in power that are cocking it up left, right, and center, so people lose trust in the government. And that's what happened in, again, small town in Alabama. I forget the exact name of the tiny, tiny place. I think we covered it in last week's show. The gentlemen that were sort of vetted for subjects for AIDS treatment. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to be as delicate as possible as well. Obviously, in the culture that we live in, I have to be very delicate. But the gentlemen that were vetted essentially for AIDS treatment, they were plucked from this culture. They lost their trust in the government because they saw how the government manipulated them, how the government behaved absolutely reprehensibly, toward them and about them, and didn't give them the treatment that they needed for some 25 years, if not longer. And it took till President Bush came along to offer an apology, and I think $40,000 or whatever it was, I forget it was, as compensation. Well, big whoop, you've had AIDS for 25 years and you get 40 grand. Yay, hallelujah. Ooh. The reality is these things should not and should never have or be going on right now. I wonder what's going to happen with the torn and twisted beautiful souls that have been shamefully treated and experimented on. I wonder how they're going to be compensated sort of 40 years from now, because that's usually the amount of time that it takes. I wonder how they're going to be compensated. I wonder how people are going to look at them. I wonder how their lives are going to go if they're still alive. We got to wake up, folks. We got to stop playing games, because as I alluded to right at the beginning of this show, human beings think that they've got it all sorted out and they're all amazing, they're all wonderful. They build a beautiful house, they build a big grand skyscrapers and da 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 and all the other things. You know what COVID actually taught us, and it's a little ghost town now in the United States that has 5 multi-millionaire mansions all sitting there in desert land going to dust. Why? Because COVID came along, they lost their funding, they lost their sponsors, they lost everything, they lost building permits, and now these millionaire mansions just sit there. Human beings are exactly the same. COVID, if it's true, let's take the sort of the premise, the idea of COVID. If it's true, COVID could have wiped out our entire population. The dinosaurs thought they were absolutely amazing. They got arrogant. I love that line. But they were wiped out like that. And a new species came along. And as Epic Wolf 3 will tell you, because she told me, every 300 years a civilization changes. The last great empire that we had was the British Empire. You could say the American, went on, but not in the same way that the British Empire did. We lost empires. We lost the sort of the big inventions, mainly because everyone was drunk and high. That's a whole nother story. Follow Art Through the Ages 101 to learn more about history. That's another one of our YouTube channels. But literally, you have to look and see what's going on and wake up. That's what I've said repeatedly on these shows to the few people that see these shows, both live and obviously going forward. That's something that has been a key theme. Final few minutes, and then we're going to wrap up the show. They've seen how far folks have gotten with the countries that have allowed freedoms for LGBTQ. Yep, I believe we were talking about this past week. Epic Wolf 3, it's a nightmare to deal with in the US. I think that's the whole thing. I think that's why the movements are being kicked out of schools here in the UK. And people have become a lot more severe. That's why the homeschool movement is also, becoming so, I think, so popular. A microschooling, because teachers don't want to teach in schools anymore. They've got sick of the politics. It's they've kind of looked at, this is what happens when you have a little bit of freedom with your LGBTQI woke ideologies. And we've seen when children are taught, 5 years old to masturbate with other children, what? When you've got drag queens coming in teaching sex ed, what? When you've got pornographic books in primary schools and the parents have no idea about that going on. That's in the United States. It's probably already happened here in the UK. Now, this isn't necessarily a show attacking the culture. It's a show attacking the agenda more than anything else. And I'm for people actually having a brain and thinking and being logical and being ethical and being moral. And nothing of what we've spoken about has any place in ethics, in morality, in spiritualism, in nature, in anything that we've spoken about. I don't want to go over an hour here because I know the people watching this might be freaked out about it. But you said there that it's a nightmare to deal with in the USA. That's part of the reason that the riots have been going on here in the UK. I think that's been a big part of it as well, because people are now saying, we've seen what your woke ideologies are doing, and we're sick of it, quite honestly. And again, people like the government only respond when they absolutely have to. An agenda in Africa has gone on for too long, pushed by the African academics, is language resistance. That's interesting. Can you expand on that a little bit, kind inquirer? What you mean by language resistance? I am very much aware, as I was when I lived in England, particularly I had a friend from Zimbabwe, And it was when Robert Mugabe was, I think, is it Prime Minister out there? I have a feeling it was Prime Minister Mugabe. I don't think it's President. Anyway, one or the other. Who the guy who basically ran all the things and did all the shots, called all the shots. And basically, you know, I was told, you know, you will never get out there on mission because nobody, first of all, is going to insure you. But second of all, because you're a white guy, you will be beheaded. You know, you'll be macheted to death. And, you know, that culled any missionary sort of ambitions that I had at that point. But it's true. I'm very much aware that, you know, a lot of the help, let's stick with the AIDS theme, shall we? A lot of the help that the United States attempted to give to Uganda and to, was it Somalia? And there was like 4 other countries, Taiwan as well was another one. And the education that was there, they funded it heavily and massively. Some of it got through. Great. Hallelujah. There was a lot that didn't and went into the back pocket of the people running the show. And interestingly enough, just furthering that, when I think it was Bush and Obama that heavily funded it, but I think it might have been Trump, whatever happened, but the funding was cut in view of spending in better areas, and literally, you know, the case has increased. So, you know, we're almost being played off air, but I just want to get to these last comments that are coming through. That and other studies have been awful. Had a post I wasn't going to be a guinea pig in that experiment when pressuring. Yeah, I was the same. You know, I had nothing to do with the vaccines. We can turn that down a little bit. Thank you. But yes, I wasn't taking. And again, if you ever watch John Campbell, Dr. John Campbell, you know, he obviously exposed a lot of what was going on with the people that were just dropping dead after taking vaccines. You know, it was a serious thing, and what's left in people's bloodstream is, you know, quite alarming for sure. And the last comment that we've got up here just now, lots more homeschooling going on, but US also, yeah, US does allow neighborhoods to start their own schools, so you can actually pull resources together with the parents to create a school not well known. That's super cool. I think that's what they call microschooling, if I'm correct. But I know that a lot of teachers have left education in institutionalized forms because they're sick and tired of the politics. They're sick and tired of going into an environment where the children just don't want to learn. They know how the system's played now. They just need to go to ChatGPT or, you know, some of these other platforms, and literally will, you know, have the answers that the teachers are looking for. So things are changing, and I'm a massive advocate for homeschooling. Of course, Teen Life Coaching is a massive advocate for homeschooling. Our aim before Mr. Farage becomes Prime Minister, because I'm confident he will, either within 5 years or shortly after, for reform here in the UK. Our aim is to try and get our Mind, Body and Soul and Teen Life Coaching curriculum into the schools, where we're teaching kids how to think for themselves, how to manage themselves, how to deal with their own health, how to deal with their own confidence, how to really learn who they are rather than just being told who they are. And I think that's going to be a major thing, but we have an uphill battle potentially about us, but maybe not. Maybe again, as Florence Scovel Shin would say, my fields are open, my decks are stacked, and I now sail into my promised land over a calm sea. And I think that's a good place as any to end. Thank you so much for watching, folks. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you are struggling with your mental health right now, come and visit us at thejohnmorris.co.uk. We have some spaces available for mental health, mentoring, and guidance, obviously with yours truly, both as part of a group or in a one-on-one basis as well. And yeah, until next time, thank you so much for watching. Take care, God bless, and we'll see you in the next video. I'll see you soon.